It is a delight for me to be here with so many friends at the House of Peace here in Ipswich, Massachusetts. It thrives through the devoted work of John and Carrie here. The theme for tonight, since fear feeds Ahriman, then how do we face artificial intelligence, needs a short bio to make it understandable, perhaps. You see, back 2 decades ago, my job allowed me to work out complicated computing solutions for various companies who were at the forefront of the new technologies that we have today. I was troubled by what products were coming to market, that the desire for maximum profits overwhelmed any concerns or healthy concerns for the environment or for humanity. I began to give lectures on the dangers of nanotechnology. I found that the scarier I made the talk, the more the audience seemed to love it. I even called these my Alfred Hitchcock lecture series. But I was troubled that I was only engendering fear in the audience while not providing a reasonable solution. One morning, I had a clear audience event. As I was waking, I heard 3 words: fear feeds Ahriman. For weeks after this, every Steiner book I opened or online lecture I began to read had words that jumped out to me that confirmed what I had heard. To make a long story short, this was the impetus to the founding of Mystech. So who is this sculpture bust that you see here called Ahriman? You see, in anthroposophy, we speak not about the devil, but about 2 tempting forces on either side of what the human being is divinely ordained to become. On one side, Lucifer tells us that earthly life is disgusting and evil, so we should leave it for a blissful life within his realm, where we will be moral beings, albeit moral automatons. Some who answer Lucifer's call will be tempted to name Lucifer's realm heaven. That other tempting force, known as Ahriman, wishes for us to deny our cosmic heritage and to declare that the only thing that matters is the here and now, my life. I am what matters, and matter is the only known reality. Everything else is fantasy that can be safely explored with psychedelics. Ahriman says, find your heaven here on earth. Some 20 years ago is when I would say all of this work began. So let's dive into this now. And the first question I want to ask all of you is, are we living in the most dangerous of times? Perhaps being a Cathar in 1176 would be in the top 10 for living in dangerous times. Cathars believed one could purify their astral body, a process known as catharsis. They carried John's gospel with them. They were pacifists. So when they were declared to be heretics, and the Pope endorsed a crusade against them, it was relatively easy to wipe them out. But sympathizers remained. Thus, the infamous Inquisition resulted from the church's attempt to eradicate all sympathizers. Our times are indeed dangerous. This is by cosmic design, as we'll see. I've collected some quotes that speak to the dangers we face. For example, CEOs recently felt that, well, almost half of them did, that AI could destroy humanity within 5 to 10 years. That was listed on Yahoo. Sam Altman, who is now quite well known as the CEO of the organization OpenAI, remarked, "The bad case," and I think this is important to say, is like lights out for all of us. Existential risks posed by AI are now widely recognized. For example, Geoffrey Hinton, known as the godfather of AI and won the prestigious $1 million Turing Award in 2018, recently resigned his Google post to lobby for a moratorium on the deployment and even development of artificial intelligence. The likeliness of AI leading to human extinction exceeds that of, and this is according to a recent report, climate change, pandemics, asteroid strikes, supervolcanoes, and nuclear war. And many said it exceeds the danger of all of these combined. There is a long tradition of the human being as spirit, soul, and body. These three come from three different worlds, and they are integrated in us as earthly human beings. When one leaves the physical world and crosses what is called the threshold with their consciousness, these inner elements split up, and what was one become three. In our time, mankind as a whole is crossing the threshold. In our age, for our evolution, individuals have to acquire something from going past the guardian of the threshold. Although individuals are unaware of this, the whole of humanity is crossing the threshold. That's our unaware danger. Yes, we should be asking, what is the human being? Artificial intelligence will push us to be asking this question. We have Darwin and materialism claiming that we've evolved out of animals, and all of evolution resulted from an electrical chemical accident somewhere in the galaxy. Spiritual science reverses this picture of evolution, putting the logos as the source and the archetype of the human, and that all things became through it. It also shows that the human being is threefold, a microcosm of the macrocosm. We are spirit, soul, and body, or in Greek, pneuma, psyche, and soma. Everywhere we looked before the advent of technology, we saw this threefolding. We saw the human being as a microcosm of the macrocosm of fixed stars, moving stars, and the earth. Now, I claim that we have an urgent need for threefolding because of the future of jobs. When the industrial age began, it was met by Luddites. They felt their jobs were at stake and would be lost to machines. Perhaps once again, the most pressing problem coming in the next decade is that of the job market. Many people identify themselves with their job. It gives them a purpose in life, a feeling of contributing to the overall welfare of humanity. One is often blamed as lazy or a parasite if they are without a job. When we talk about the future of the job market, we realize how critical is the need today for threefolding. So I'll read you a few quotes here. AI won't replace you. Someone using AI will. AI eliminated nearly 4,000 jobs in May. And by June, IBM said 8,000 jobs just in their company will be eliminated. AI could take the jobs of as many as 1 billion people globally and make 375 million jobs obsolete over the next decade. Goldman Sachs estimates 300 million jobs could be lost by 2029, and over 50 million Chinese workers will require retraining as a result of AI-related deployment. So I think the necessity of Waldorf education as well comes into more focus. So I am going to suggest to you that because 80 to 90% of those who are eligible to work will not be able to find jobs within 2 decades, and maybe as little as 1. We need threefolding as soon as possible. Why? Well, right now, as this progresses, I am beginning to hear the cry of Bolshevism all over again. Death to the elites, death to the technocrats, because they're the ones. They. I think we are also going to find that innovation itself, at least within the physical realm, will come to a kind of standstill because machines will be making all the products. We will not need to innovate further to have low cost for the products that are being made. We'll have complete uncertainty in truth, and we're moving in this direction, at least in the physical realm. Thus, we will need to be able to move into the spiritual realm in order to find truth. How does one self-assess themselves? Well, with AI, this will become more and more difficult. You will not be able to use intelligence per se as what makes you more competitive or more valuable or something of this nature. We'll also see more of credit ratings and social credits as seen in China coming about in the rest of the world. And we will have to focus more and more on the question of what is moral. How do we bring about a society that still has morality? And that begs the question, will universal basic income be enough? Remember, humanity is crossing the threshold. Will it be a breakthrough that leads to an enhanced interest in the spiritual? So let's explore a little bit of what's happened in the industrial age and make comparisons to what will happen in the next couple decades in the age of artificial intelligence. Here we have a textile factory. Imagine having this for your 8 to 5 job. If you hated this work, your only hope was to get married. Now, these men had similar 8 to 5 jobs, only they got paid a lot more. Think of the dramatic change for the role of women in the workplace that has taken place in the past few decades. I ask you, were these jobs dominated by Ahriman or Lucifer or both? Was there space here for Christ? Here we see telephone operators. In a way, we can say, thankfully, all these jobs were replaced by electronics that had a kind of artificial intelligence built into them. And this happened decades ago. So not only the telephone network, but the World Wide Web is now run by such electronics. Here we see an automobile factory. I once worked in one over this summer job. I had the so-called graveyard shift, third shift. Those jobs in general are gone now. This factory probably has only a few dozen blue-collar workers. Everything is being done by robots. I ask you again, is this a bad thing? Or could it be a good thing for human evolution that humans aren't required to have these Ahrimanic jobs? So what are we manufacturing? Well, one thing is computer chips. Notice the environment here. Don't they look kind of like astronauts? In 1971, the Intel chip, the 4004, had 2,250 transistors. 50 years later, in the same physical space, we have 50 million times more transistors, and we will have over 100 billion transistors this year, and we will surpass 1 trillion in just a couple more years by 2025. That's because the manufacturing process keeps shrinking. And so we get more and more in the same real estate. But we're reaching the end of that process. So when we have all of these jobs being done by computers, we will have lots of free time. What will we do with this freedom? Have we given autonomy to Ahrimanic beings to manage the future? Have we diverted much of what we need to what they need, or so it seems? What entities are deciding the future? Might there be different futures? Might some entities want a certain future and they will get it, while us humans also want a certain future and we will get that as well? And they will be different but coexisting futures? I'll talk about that. Not only do we face the dangers of AI, but also of transhumanism, which asks us to think of the human being as a biological machine. For example, the brain as a biocomputer. Will we replace fragile biohumans with advanced robotic humans? Will it become possible to upload one's consciousness into a robot or into the cloud? What does your gut tell you that we should do about this danger? What are our options? Well, we can reject it, fight against it, stop it now. We can accept it because we come to accept that it's part of our human evolution. We can create neo-Amish communities where such things are not permitted. Or we can try to find the Christ path, perhaps the true path of human evolution. Some of us cry out, "Oh, why now? This is not fair." That's a common reaction, and Rudolf Steiner had an answer. Of course, it might surprise you to hear this, so I'll quote him. "If nothing but the old impulses were to operate, the only future in sight would be one in which technology would not only dominate the whole of our external life, but would overpower and paralyze us, driving out from the human soul anything of a religious, scientific, philosophic, or artistic, or even ethical nature. Without fresh spiritual impulses, humans will turn into something like living automatons." That's from GA 136, 11 of April, 1912. So if you think that your thoughts are merely thoughts and have nothing to do with the happenings in the universe, you are being deluded into believing that you can have no influence upon the evolution of the earth. and that either with or without your collaboration, the earth will someday come to an end as the sun expands and eats it up. But the earth will not come to a purely physical end. Its end will come in a way brought about by mankind itself. And in the 60s and 70s and 80s, we worried that it was going to be nuclear war that would bring it to an end. But Steiner tells us its end will come in the way brought about by mankind itself. And this will result from extreme egoism and moral failure in the seventh cultural age. When is that? I will tell you very briefly. So, another quote from Rudolf Steiner: only a genuine concern of each for his or her neighbor can bring salvation to mankind in the future. The characteristic feature of the cultural age that we're in now, of the consciousness soul, is one's isolation. That's because we are developing the soul within the soul, the consciousness soul as it's known. We are now inwardly isolated from our neighbor as a consequence of the development of personality, our individuality. Now, within this tendency to be separative, we must begin work on a reciprocal pole that consists in the cultivation of an active concern for our neighbor. This awakening of an active concern for others must be developed ever more consciously during this cultural age of the consciousness soul, to be ready for the next cultural age, or the sixth. For gradually in the course of the fifth, sixth, and seventh cultural ages, the individual will have to devote himself increasingly and with loving care to the shortcomings of our neighbor. Anthroposophy speaks of our human nature as having four members, namely physical, etheric, and astral bodies, and ego. The ego, or I am, is our youngest member, but is also for us the most significant member of our humanness. Now, in this evolution, we have progressed through different stages. And when Earth began, it recapitulated all of the previous, you might call them solar systems or planetary conditions that are known as Saturn, Sun, Moon. We're now in Earth, which is comprised of two parts, Mars part, and now what we're in, the Mercury timeframe of Earth evolution. And in the future, we will have Jupiter, Venus, and then Vulcan. So we're in the middle of our cosmic evolution. So we've talked about the physical, etheric, astral, and I am, and one can compare this to the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. In that mineral, it is lifeless within. The plant distinguishes itself from the mineral by having life within it. The animal distinguishes it by having an inner life, and the human by having self-consciousness. And if the human being consisted only of physical, etheric, and astral, we would not really be a full human being. The human being is a human being because he received his ego from the spirits of the higher hierarchies during Earth evolution. We develop our ego in the course of our successive incarnations in different human communities through peoples and periods until the Earth arrives at its goal. And human beings arrive at their goal, which is developing this ego so that it can develop higher spiritual members. So now, not only have we had these prior planetary conditions, but in each one of them, we have 7 epochs. And within each epoch, we have 7 cultural ages. Each cultural age today lasts 2,160 years, or the time frame it takes the sun to pass through a zodiac sign. And this is assuming each of the 12 zodiac signs take up 1/12. Obviously, physically, some are smaller, some are larger. So the zodiac is divided into 12 units, shall we say. And let me go back to the epochs. We are now in the 5th epoch. We will have a 6th and a 7th. And we are also now in the 5th cultural age. And this leads to lots and lots of problems. We see the name Atlantean. It's a previous epoch. And the Atlantean epoch came to a close through a major change in the interrelationship of water and air, causing a flooding on the earth, the deluge, as it's known. And then we began these cultural ages, the Indian, the Persian, the Egyptian, the Greco-Roman, and now. And the 6th is known as a Russian, and the 7th as the American cultural ages. And here in these cultural ages that you see in the right column, we can see what part of our being the ego is working upon. So during the Atlantean, it was working on the physical. During the Indian, or the first cultural age, the etheric body, then the astral, and so on, as you can see here. Okay, so now we have a significant background, and I'm going to take you into something that I've begun intensive work and research on, called the mysteries of death and the mystery of evil. In the Bible, Yahweh says after the event in Eden, "Behold, the man has become as one of us, able to know the good and the evil." I want you to really carry this word know the evil. Did we know it right then and there? No, we became capable, but it became part of our destiny to truly know evil. And so how could that come about? So we had this fall. We had to descend from the realm in which humanity was beginning its evolution in Eden to a different set of circumstances, one much more deeply involved in the physical realm, which didn't exist yet during Eden's time. So let's first try to understand the mystery of death. Most of us can accept earth is the element in which death appears and may be experienced. But Steiner stunned me when he continued with this insight. Death, as it is seen and felt by humans, is a deceptive phenomenon, an error. Death, when contemplated in its true form, is the Father God. Death, when contemplated in its true form, is the Father God. And Christ came into the world because a false reflection of this Father had arisen in the aspect of death. And just as an aside, Ahriman, who is the father of lies, is also the Lord of death. Christ came to create the true form, a true image of the living Father God. The Son is the issue of the Father, and his mission was to reveal the true form of the Father. Ahriman is the Lord of death, and he has created this deception, this error. And through the grasping of the mystery upon Golgotha, we will come to realize that both death and heredity are actually supersensible phenomenon. For the true nature of the Father, Christ made manifest, life eternal, veiled behind temporal death. In anthroposophy, this mystery upon Golgotha is called the turning point in time, and it occurred in the fourth of 7 cultural ages of this, the 5th epoch. Each age has a task, an aspect of the human constitution to develop. In the 4th cultural age, that is from 747 BCE to 1413 AD, it was the intellectual soul that had to be developed. In our age, it is now the consciousness soul that is our cosmic task. Before the 4th cultural age, instinctive clairvoyance gave primeval man the awareness of our essential nature, even after birth from the spiritual world into the physical world. One knew that their own essential being had entered into a physical body. You could compare it to that of a snake when it sheds its skin. As the 4th cultural age, the Greco-Latin cultural age, that is, progressed, one felt life after death to have become a shadow experience. In a way, this is what Easter Saturday was meant to renew or to fix. Today, in order to discover the forces of birth and death within, one must attain a knowledge of repeated lives on earth. Our journey into the physical realm where we experience death was meant to be temporary, only so long as it took us to develop freedom. I'll quote Steiner from this book. To bring about birth and death, the gods needed entities whose minds and whole way of looking at the world give them the urge to destroy and lay waste to everything which provides for the welfare of human beings here in the physical world. Why is that? We have to get used to the idea that the world is not made as people would really like it to be, and that there exists the element which in the Egyptian mysteries was known as iron necessity. As part of this iron necessity, entities hostile to the physical world are used by the gods to bring about birth and death for human beings. We can understand this when we understand that our physical existence on the earth is meant to be temporary. Okay, now you're probably asking, all right, so I'm beginning to understand this mystery of death. What does technology have to do with it? All right, sorry to use another quote from Steiner, but sometimes I feel if I say it in my own words, you're not going to believe me. So at certain times, I feel I've just got to go to a quote from Steiner. This is from a lecture cycle called From Symptom to Reality, given on the 20th of October, 1918, GA 185. The question then arises, if modern technology is simply a source of death, as it must inevitably be, why did it arise? Certainly not in order to provide mankind with a spectacle of machines and industry, but for a totally different reason. It arose precisely because of the seeds of death it bore within it. For if man is surrounded by a moribund, mechanical civilization, it is only by reacting against it that he can develop the consciousness soul. So long as we lived in communion with nature, that is, before the advent of the machine age, we were open to this suggestion because we were not fully conscious. We were unable to be fully self-sufficient because we had not yet experienced the forces of death. The mysteries of death becoming more understandable. A little bit more from this quote now. Ego consciousness and the forces of death are closely related. So what Rudolf Steiner is telling us is that to develop the consciousness soul, we must have an environment that speaks of death to us. Moreover, these elements of birth and death have been released by the higher beings for us to eventually, and hopefully we do it soon, take them up and control them. For now, these elemental, as Ahrimanic beings, are entering technology and commerce. You see, in spiritual science, Earth evolution, with its 7 major epochs, and then in these epochs, 7 cultural ages, that what happens, starts in one, has to be resolved in another later. And Steiner drew this diagram where you can see that the questions and the mysteries of birth and death must be resolved in now our cultural age, the 5th. And the mysteries of evil will need to be resolved in the next cultural age. Thus, to develop the consciousness soul, we have had to come not only to grasp the mystery of death, but also the mysteries of evil. We must have assimilated these forces of death within us in order to truly grasp them. Likewise, in order to truly grasp and deal with the mysteries of evil, we will have to assimilate them within us. Now, evil will not be fully rectified and redeemed until that next planetary condition I mentioned earlier, the next solar system, which carries the esoteric name Jupiter. It is precisely this influx of evil tendencies into us that allow us to develop in the future spirit self, life spirit, and spirit man. These are our astral body, etheric body, and physical body spiritualized by our ego's activity. So I'd like to just also comment that we have to come to see that evil tendencies are already in each of us. When we look at another and point the finger and say, that person is evil, so is the Christ not working in us. All of us have that tendency in us, and it is there as a necessity for our evolution. We have assimilated and we will continue to assimilate evil within us. It doesn't mean we will act upon it, but when we are deliberating to make important decisions, the voices of evil will and necessarily must be part of that deliberation. Thus, we come to an understanding of why the philosophy of freedom is so important. So we can see that evil isn't there to try to provoke us to do evil acts, necessarily, but is there to enable us to experience consciously the life of the Spirit at the level of our development today, at the level of the consciousness soul. So the purpose of these forces of evil are thus to develop spiritual love, that is, to love thy neighbor during the age when the development of manas would otherwise lead to extreme egoism. Spirit self. If we don't develop this love for thy neighbor, we will therefore develop extreme egoism when we work upon spirit self. So we have to not only meet, but assimilate the evil that we will experience. And we can see technology doing this, enabling evil to be assimilated within our culture and within ourselves. Much of these forces of evil are already within us. As I said, our best course of action is an inner one, to experience the life of the Spirit within. If you are thinking, my goodness, this is the philosophy of freedom, you're right. And in that philosophy of freedom, Steiner talked about an ethical individualism, and that our truly free deeds are deeds done out of love. Such an individual is confident that, especially in an age when evil tendencies are increasing, each one can, if that one rises to intuitions, transmute these evil tendencies into that which, for the consciousness soul, is destined to become the principle of the good, that which is befitting the dignity of man. And so we can begin to understand Rudolf Steiner's words, in guilt lies the path to freedom. To live in love of our action and to live in the full understanding of the other's will is the fundamental maxim of free human beings. This timeline I show indicates now the dates of what we've been talking about. So you see 1413 extending to 3573, that's 2,160 years, for our current post-Atlantean cultural age. That's what PACA stands for, when we develop the consciousness soul. In the sixth, known as the Russian or Slavic age, we will develop brotherhood. And with that, we will develop the seed for manas. And in the seventh, the seed for buddhi. And that's called the American, which has the task of bringing to an end everything in the physical realm for the fifth epoch. Here we are today in 2023, and in the near future, we have Ahriman's incarnation to deal with, which I put at 2233, because I don't think Ahriman will incarnate in the flesh, which he must, during the time when Michael is the time spirit. Raphael will be more to his liking. So here in this, I've moved the timeline a little bit out so you can see the beginning of the sixth epoch. And here is that time of Philadelphia, the development of spiritual love. And out here is the war of all against all. And you should be asking now, what? How do we go from brotherly love to a war of all against all? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it's because when this era of Philadelphia occurs, it will be only for a small group of humanity. Unfortunately, much of humanity will still be immersed within materialism. Now, the development of manas, or spirit self, during the sixth post-Atlantean cultural age leads, as we've said, to extreme egoism if one retains their ties to the physical realm. Only when one knows that truth is found in the spiritual world and that the physical is Maya can manas lead one upwards. Today, the appearance of Christ in the etheric is showing us the way. It will last until about the year 5000. Soon thereafter, sexual procreation will have ended. This is the long story, but to make it short, by that time frame, the human soul and body mutual interaction will cease by the age of 14. Today it's 27. In the time of Christ, it was 33. And back in Indian times, it lasted up into 1/6. So we will no longer reach puberty by the year 5000. This will be a time when the Maitreya Buddha will appear and will touch the remains of Kashyapa with his right hand, causing this corpse to be transported in fire into the etheric realm. Think of this as a picture, the Maitreya Buddha touching you, your Kashyapa, and causing your physical body's remains to be transported into the etheric realm. This is similar to the resurrection body being lifted. This is the same fire made manifest to Paul on the road to Damascus. This fire will rescue for future times all that was great and noble in this fifth epoch. In the spiritualized fire in which the Christ appeared to Paul, the body of Kashyapa, untouched by corruption, will be saved through the Maitreya Buddha. This is a picture of how our ascension will take place. For the seventh post-Atlantean cultural age, for the benefit of those who were not able to ascend earlier, some kind of life on earth will continue. And this will require working with the fallen spirits of darkness, as well as the gods of technology, namely the Vulcan beings. Near the end of the seventh post-Atlantean cultural age, there will arise a brood of spidery beings who will become manifest from those materialistic thoughts we carry today. And they will cover the earth, making a web interconnecting them. These will arise out of the dead thoughts that we form today and in the near future. They arise as the moon begins to come closer to the earth. And this change in the moon's orbit, Steiner doesn't say how, perhaps by an asteroid hitting the moon, but around the year 6000 or close to this time when a new physical body for us to live in arises, that's when the moon begins its descent to the earth. And by the way, that new physical body will not go through birth nor death. We will have taken control of those elemental beings by then. Now, I need to mention another set of spiritual beings known as the Ahrimanic double. And we talked about Eden and our fall. And I have to mention that Ahriman had a horde. And when Ahriman was asked to come into human evolution, Due to the success of Lucifer, they claimed they wanted bodies. And these bodies that they wanted to use them to conquer the earth. This is behind the inspiration of transhumanism. This is the goal that the Ahrimanic double has for us. Now, they placed electricity and magnetism into the body as we were descending, that is, into the physical body. They helped to prepare it for us. So, as I said, they needed bodies to conquer the earth. And so they are preparing our joint body for their purposes once we ascend and leave behind this body. So Steiner talks about this future time as that which is explained in Matthew 25 of the separation of sheep and goats, or in the Apocalypse of the separation of a good and evil race that will separate out of free choice. This is the importance of philosophy of freedom for the future, why it is so important. It is not an easy choice to make. It may seem easy today, but as we progress, there will be forces that will be quite successful to be able to say what we call good is evil, and what we call evil will be called the good. A materialistic race will remain at the standpoint of evil and will populate the earth as an evil race. It will lie entirely within the individual as to whether their soul will remain in the bad race or will ascend by spiritual culture to a good race. Hear those words again, will ascend by spiritual choice and spiritual culture into the good race. That's from GA 99, given on the 5th of June, 1907. During the latter part of the 6th and throughout the 7th post-Atlantean cultural age, there will be, quote, a separation into good and evil races. The 5th root race, people as we are now, will perish through evil. Good and evil are still relatively undifferentiated, and it's hard to see who's evil or good behind the flesh. But in this future time, one's countenance will reveal whether one's soul works for good or for evil. We now have the task of working towards the great moment of the 6th cultural age, when humanity will undertake a great spiritual ascent. We must endeavor to become spiritual scientists to enable humanity to come out of materialism. Our society is called upon to guide humanity, not from motives of pride nor of elitism, but as a task and a duty. So a sufficient group of people must join together in order to prepare this future I've been talking about. But this union is not to be conceived of geographically. All ideas of locality, according to Steiner, must lose their meaning. People over the whole earth will find each other to make communities. And again, that's from The Future of Man, GA 99. You know, as an admin for Facebook group Anthroposophy, I have read a lot of posts where people are hoping for a future that looks like the world we have, basically a future that brings heaven to earth. Steiner pointed out it is hopelessness to envision a future, such as a heaven on earth. But he does point out that a welding together of man and machine will occur. Many will say, yuck, I would not want to incarnate into that future. So must the physical world as we know it come to an end? And if it must, how do we overcome the physical? What will motivate us to leave the physical behind? If the boundary between the living and the dead became transparent, would that help? How soon will that be? Can I be enthusiastic about this? Out of the realm of which Michael was himself the servant, the Christ being descended into the sphere of earth, that he may be at hand when the power of intelligence that was once the cosmic intelligence shall have passed completely over to the human individual. Now, this word individual should be underscored. The time has come when the urge is in us to give ourselves to that intellectual force, that Ahrimanic power. But Christ is at hand. Through his great sacrifice, he now accompanies us into the sphere where Ahriman dwells. We now have the choice between Christ and Ahriman. Form comes to us from the spirits of form, that is the exousiai, also known as the Elohim. In order to transform another being, this requires a being on the level of the exousiai, or the Christ, to participate. So why did Andrew mention those cathars? The development of manas is the work they did to purify through catharsis the astral body. For the purified astral body is the Virgin Sophia within us. Now the words, "O man, know thyself," takes on new meaning when we look at biblical expressions of he knew her, and that resulted in something new. So he, the ego, knew her, the soul, and out of that can come spirit self. Has the higher world allowed AI to come now as a timely impetus for us to take our next step in evolution? As we've heard, the Ahrimanic inspired evil will not be redeemed during Earth evolution, but it will be during Jupiter. Something of this evil will pass over to Jupiter. The task for that redemption has been taken up by an individual known as Mani and Manichaeism. During Jupiter, we will be the angels to those who will be upon Jupiter's human stage. At some points in their evolution, we will need to enter their lowest bodily member to incarnate as one of them to lead them forward. What will be their lowest body? How will we come to know how to use it? Is this perhaps a reason for transhumanism that we can begin to experience during Earth evolution what the body of those on the human stage of Jupiter will have? So I've come now to the end of my lecture here. I know many of you are concerned that AI will leapfrog human intelligence, and that leads people to worry that AI will take over. Why is leapfrogging human intelligence sufficient for that? Might we also reply, so what? might we reply, will this lead to a better understanding of what the human being truly is? Will this help us to distinguish between living thinking and the dead thinking that AI is held to? Will this lead to machines doing Ahriman's work, thereby freeing humanity to focus on activities that promote living thinking and spiritual development? So we've heard that this development of the consciousness soul and all new spiritual impulses are a double-edged sword, not only for us, but a double-edged sword for Ahriman as well. Can we see this as an opportunity to steer humanity in the direction of our divinely inspired evolution? Of course, for that, we need to know what our evolutionary path is. And I've tried to explain that in this talk. And obviously, it is not to remain in the physical. It is not to remain passive and just let things be. Will artificial intelligence help us to find the door of ascension? Will our harmonic double fulfill its cosmic goal by taking over our departed physical bodies, or the bodies that we depart from? All of this is important for us to assume the role of angelic beings for Jupiter. To wrest from Ahriman what will be needed for Jupiter requires more than normal human capacities. It requires no longer I, but Christ in me. So I hope you can see how it is we can become enthusiastic for the future. And from GA 193, Lecture 3, I'll read this quote. But if humans are able to rouse themselves to take into their consciousness what we have been studying, if they are able to guide it, that humanity can freely confront the Ahrimanic influence, then when Ahriman does appear, does incarnate, humans will acquire precisely through Ahriman the power to realize that although the earth must enter inevitably into its decline, we humans are lifted above earthly existence through this very fact. When a human has reached a certain age in physical life, their body begins to decline. But if one is sensible, one makes no complaint, knowing that together with one's soul, one is approaching a life that does not run parallel with this physical decline. There lives in mankind something that is not bound up with the already prevailing decline of the physical earth, but becomes more and more spiritual just because of this physical decline. Let us learn to say frankly, yes, the earth is in its decline, and human life too, in respect of its physical manifestation. But just because it is so, let us muster the strength and enthusiasm to draw our civilization, that element which springing from mankind itself will live on while the earth is in decline as the immortal fruit of earth evolution. So I hope that if you like this, you will consider coming to the Mystech Conference, August 9th to the 12th. Sorry to put a plug in, but I thought I should let you know because many of you will get a lot out of this. It happens each year during the height of the Perseid meteor showers. And with that, we can open this up to our Q&A with the words, "My kingdom is not of this world." And that should lead each of us to say, "My kingdom too is not of this world." So thank you all very much. And with that, we can take your questions.